We continue with our discussion on leadership, and we are calling it Leadership Bible Leader Style. We have done many men, and I think we should do a few women. Today, our discussion is going to draw lessons out of a lady called Esther, Esther the Queen. And her story is a very good story because for all of us who are leaders, it's good to see and draw lessons, because there's a reason why the story was put in the Bible, so that those of us who read can actually be encouraged and can improve who we are and what we are and our impact on our followers on the basis of the things that we have actually learned. You know, many Jews were living at this time in Persia at the time of Esther. She was one of the many Jews in the kingdom of Persia. You know, Jews had been exiled from Judah 100 years before this time. So they had lived there for 100 years. So they basically had forgotten even how Judah looks like, other than from the stories and the Bible and the stories of the Bible they were reading. Once Jerusalem fell about 587 BC. So this is around 487. That's when they were deported to Babylon. They stayed in Babylon, but somewhere within 100 years, Persia conquered Babylon, and so therefore they now were taken over. So they were originally with the Babylonians, then now they are with the Persians. This lady, Esther, grew up with her parents, already died, an orphan, and she was brought up by an uncle called Mordecai. And this girl, Esther, was actually a cousin, not a niece, a cousin, but a young cousin. And so she was living with Mordecai in exile. Somewhere 650 miles northeast of their hometown of Jerusalem. So they are pretty far. 650 miles is quite far. That's the context within which we see the life of Esther, who finally became a queen of a superpower, because Persia was a superpower, occupied most of the then known world. You know, her name, Esther, means Ishtar, the Babylonian goddess of love, or from the Persian word of star, for star. Her Hebrew name was actually not Esther. She was called Hadassah, which means the plant metal. We know we can get something about her character, this orphan girl in a foreign land, and was willing to conceal her Jewish identity. After 100 years, they had become part of the kingdom, and she wanted to hide the fact that she was actually a Jew, because then only then would a king be willing to make her a queen. Esther seemed willing to remain moral right, but of course you would wonder, if she really is a Jewish girl, why is she agreeing to become queen and sleep with a Persian king? Because you see, once she is in the kingdom and in the palace, she'll have to have some worship of idols, I guess. Even so, she displayed great courage in the midst of this crisis. You could condemn her for being there, but she remained committed to her God, prior to risking her life for her people. She was willing to die for the sake of the Jews. She humbled herself by fasting, and then put her considerable beauty, social grace, and wisdom. And we see her influencing her boss, the king, until the children of Israel are actually rescued. Her sorrow was to learn that her husband, the king, had unwittingly placed her life and the life of her people in jeopardy. You can imagine the king who has written and signed and sealed a letter to her for all the Jews to be killed. Of course, he didn't know that the wife is a Jew. But her joy was to watch mourning turn to celebration, where the day they were supposed to be killed, they were allowed to fight back, and many of their enemies ended up dying. That's a summary of the story. And I want to draw a few lessons out of. I want to draw a few lessons out of this story. I think the first thing I learned is, if you can avoid, try to avoid embarrassing bosses, because if you embarrass them, they will act unreasonably. That's how Esther ended up getting her position, because Vashti, the previous queen of Persia, a very powerful woman in the Middle East, used her power wrongly, and it ended up annoying her husband. Her husband, it was called Success, had just summoned her to appear before a festive gathering in jolly mood. And at that time, Vashti the queen embarrassed her husband by refusing to go. She had no intention of parading herself like a prize cow in front of a herd of drunken men. Not me, she said. In fact, we read in the book of Esther, chapter 1, verse 16, then Memnon replied in the presence of the king and the nobles, Queen Vashti has done wrong, not only against the king, but also against all the nobles and the peoples of all the province of King Xerxes, by refusing to come. My friend, if somebody has power over you, why would you want to provoke him? It can work out against you, and it did for Vashti. Avoid embarrassing somebody who is your supervisor. It is not worth it. You can actually disagree with him without embarrassing him. You can disagree with him with respect. But that's not what Vashti did. She was most arrogant against. And then obviously it provoked the king, and she lost her leadership. And that's something all of us as leaders who report to yet bigger leaders need to learn. Never, ever, unless you are foolish, or unless there's I don't think anything can explain your disrespect to your leadership, to the board of directors, or whoever is supervising you. The word of God is key. Give respect to whom respect. If you don't, and instead you go to the extreme of embarrassing them, you will be saying you are being persecuted. But the truth is, you are a person who has not been wise in dealing. And that's one of the lessons we ran right at the beginning of the story, from the story of Esther. The next lesson we learn is how Mordecai advised this Jewish girl, there's going to be a competition to replace Vashti. Please take my advice. Being a Jew, it would have been difficult for her to win. But Mordecai knew that this young cousin is beautiful enough, but she should keep mum about her parentage, Jewish connection. Because obviously she was speaking the language of the colonizer. She spent the next 12 months awaiting her tryst with the king. She was made beautiful, even more. She was beautiful by nature. She was made even more beautiful. And when the moment came, Esther went in, and it pleased Success. So that's how she became the replacement for Vashti. Esther chapter 2 verse 4 says, then let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. The advice appealed to the king, and he followed it. So what lesson are we drawing out of here? God can use any gift he has given us, including beauty, to achieve his purpose. You need to ask yourself, what are gifts God has given you? Please use them wisely and well. For this lady, all she had is beauty, but the beauty promoted her to the right to the queen of a superpower. Beauty. And some people use their beauty to become prostitutes and to become immoral. Some people use their gift of oratory in order to con people. You can use your gift anyhow. But if you want to be a good leader, please check what are your gifts. Don't specialize on your weakness. Check. Do a SWOT analysis. What SWOT analysis? Look at your strengths and your weaknesses. Look at the opportunities around you and also the threats around you. When you have done proper analysis, please manage your weaknesses and utilize your strength. And when you do that, you will discover, wow, everybody tells me I'm beautiful. How can this beauty be used for the good of my objective and my mission, whichever God have given me? You know, in Esther chapter 1, verse 11, we read, to bring before him Queen Vashti wearing her royal crown in order to display her beauty to the people and nobles, for she was lovely to look at. But when the attendants delivered the king's command, Queen Vashti refused to come Then the king became furious and banned her. I'm still not given up on learning something out of this Vashti lady. It's not just the issue of provocation, but the fact that you need to allow your supervisors some level of foolishness. In other words, if they ask you to do something that is foolish, but not wrong, not immoral, not dishonoring to God, you can't start fighting them because of a foolish thing. Obviously, the king calling he must have been drunk for him to call the queen to parade herself. What are other things? Do you take your time to try to show your supervisor how foolish he is? How will that help the cause? How will it help your mission? You can actually achieve your mission and still leave his respect intact. That's not what this lady actually did. So not only is it wrong to embarrass your boss, it's also wrong not to allow him some level of foolishness. In other words, there are some things you do, and you ask yourself, how does it change? For example, your boss tells you, instead of coming at 8, come at 7 o'clock. But you are still going to leave to work for 8 hours. Obviously, if that be the thing that they are doing, you ask yourself, I'm still working 8 hours. I'll be coming at 7 o'clock. Why should I fight them? You don't bother. Wait until there is a proper. In other words, if you're a wise leader, you choose your fights. You don't fight your supervisors on everything. You pick which area to fight them on. And when they go beyond the line, that one fight. But because they have seen the way you have respected them in the past, they will listen to you on the issues that you have actually raised. You know, sometime later, now she is queen, she is with the king. Although obviously the truth of the matter is she is queen, but there are other women that were also available to the king. An Amalekite refugee also called Haman was promoted into a very powerful position in Persia. Haman was so highly placed that other officials had to kneel before him as a sign of respect, like they are worshiping this guy. He's not the king, but he's so powerful. If you don't want trouble in the empire, you kind of worship him. However, one man called Mordecai, the cousin of Esther, refused to kneel Haman. Why did he refuse? Because Jews believed the only one you can worship is God, no human being. Whether king or junior, they don't worship anybody else. So Mordecai was committed to Jehovah. So he said, no, I can't do that. But that made the Amalekite, Mr. Haman, so angry that he decided to eliminate every Jew in the whole of the kingdom. Esther chapter 3. After these events, King Xerxes honored Haman, son of Hammedatha, we read, the Agagite, elevating him and giving him a seat of honor higher than that of all the other nobles. All the royal officials of the king's gate knelt down and paid honor to Haman, for the king had commanded this concerning him. But Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor. Then the royal officials of the king's gate asked Mordecai, why do you disobey the king's command? Day after day they spoke to him, but he refused to comply. Therefore they told Haman about it to see whether Mordecai's behavior would be tolerated, for he had told them he was a Jew. So there was a kind of a hatred for Jews. So this matter, because they are not the ones, it sounds like Haman had not noticed, but they won't report him to the king. What are we learning out of this? When it comes to worship, there can be no compromise, despite the risk you take. And you see, when people realize that you cannot compromise on issues of worship, they'll check what are the benefits to the kingdom. What are the benefits to the kingdom? The moment they know that the kingdom, the business is benefiting, they'll be willing to tolerate you because they say, on that matter, don't touch him. But you cannot compromise. But for you to be allowed not to compromise, then you must be a good worker. You must perform excellently. But there's no way that because you want to be promoted, you can start compromising on the issues of worship. That's something you shouldn't ever worship or be involved in. You know, Exodus chapter 3 verse 5 says, when Haman saw that Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor, he was enraged. Yet having learned who Mordecai's people were, he scorned the idea of killing only Mordecai. Instead, Haman looked for a way to destroy all Mordecai's people, the Jews, throughout the whole kingdom of Success, Persia. In the 12th year of King Xerxes, in the first month, the month of Nisan, the par, that is the lot, that's now verse 7, was cast in the presence of Haman to select a day and month, and the lot fell on the 12th month, the month of Adar. This guy is so provoked by not being worshipped that he wants to destroy. Evil people design punishment that's unrelated to the crime. Surely, what have the other Jews done? It's just Mordecai who has refused to kneel to you. But now you don't want to deal with Mordecai. You want to deal with all the Jews, and not just in Susa or in the capital. In the whole of the kingdom, you'll be killing millions of people. What for? That's what Hitler did. That's what a lot of people do. You are annoyed by one person, you destroy the whole family. You are annoyed by one department person, you destroy everybody in the department. It is very, very wrong. As a leader, you need to learn that doesn't make you a good person. You need to be clear that you need to ensure that the punishment is related to the crime. I used to tell a HR person that do not recommend firing for every crime. Surely, if somebody comes late for work, what if you fire him? What about the guy who steals? Sure, there must be a difference in the punishment of the guy who came late for work, which is bad, and the one who actually stole from the company. So be clear that the punishment is equal to the crime. That's the way people will feel you are fair and you have justice. And the moment they see you as somebody who is fair and just, even if you punish them or discipline them, they will want to work for you. They will want to follow you. And you can rest assured your business, your church, whatever it is you are leading, your family, will go places despite your disciplining of them, because they can see your fairness. Haman was certainly not fair, and therefore not a good king. And no wonder, like you will see in the story, he didn't end up very well. You know, Esther chapter 4, verse 11 says, all the king's officials and the people of the royal province know that for any man or woman who approaches the king in the inner court without being summoned, the king has but one law, that they be put to death, unless the king extends the golden scepter to them and spares their lives. But 30 days have passed since I was called to go to the king. You see, the story is developing. He has decided he wants to destroy everybody in the kingdom who is a Jew. He is able to trick the king to actually seal a decree that on a certain date they are going to destroy the Jews. And that's when Mordecai knows he is dying, so he goes and tells the sister. But now we just want to look at this lack of wisdom of Haman and the king. Mordecai reacted immediately to this threat by contacting his cousin Esther and asking her to beg Xerxes for mercy. But Esther was afraid, and that's why he replies the way he does. I'm saying a good leader knows what is urgent and treats it as urgent. If you took time, the day to arrive, and your people will be destroyed. So Mordecai did not take time. He was a wise man. He was a creative man, a wise leader. So what he does, he goes to Esther and is able to think through what he needs to do. Esther can also see the necessity. She's not complaining about the necessity of trying to go to the king for intervention. But then she knows that if you dare go to the king without the king inviting you, you are actually going to be dead. The lesson we drew out of here is that when you are in a crisis, please put your thinking mask. Do not fail to think. Be creative. Take the example of Mordecai and Esther. that they can think, what is it? What are the alternatives available? Do not think that you have no alternative, and so you end up getting killed. This leader was creative. Esther and the cousin were creative. But I like what Mordecai told Esther when Esther was afraid. Verse 13, he sent back this answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows? But you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. What is really this wise Mordecai saying? He's saying, maybe the only reason you are promoted was this day. Okay, you have enjoyed being a queen, being served, but how do you know that the reason God created the possibility of you getting to this position was not so that he can use you at a time? Our positions, please understand, as leaders, have divine purpose. There's always a reason why you got a promotion. There's always a reason why you become the top of anywhere. There's a reason why you have the career you have. And you always need to find out, why has God made me this? And please, don't think about what you are getting out of the job. Think of what you are supposed to give. What does God expect? So he was taught. It might be the reason why God has brought you to this job is for such a time as this. So what do you think? Why do you think God has given you favor and you're in various positions? A good leader is able to answer that question. Then in Esther chapter 4, verse 15, we read, then Esther sent this reply to Mordecai, go gather together all the Jews who are in Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my attendants will fast as you do. When this is done, I'll go to the king, even though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. When cornered, do not think that your God is also cornered. They were in a tight spot. She's likely to die. But they said, wow, not God. Let's go into prayer. Let's not do something foolish. Let's ask God's intervention. A good leader teams up with God. You don't go to do anything without consulting him. Here, Esther is praying and fasting, although the word prayer is actually not used. They are fasting, a group of them. So that by the time he goes, they are assured of God's intervention. That's what happened. Do you know, the more senior you are, the more time you need to spend in prayer. And that's what Esther teaches us, the importance of prayer. And in this predicament that the Jewish race had in the Persian kingdom, it is the prayer that actually sorted them out. So he is saying, she is replying, and if I perish, I perish. What do you think she is saying? Leadership means you weigh the risks, but you take the calculated risk. You cannot be a leader and not take risks. It's only they are calculated. She thought through, she knew she could die, but she knew there is a God in heaven who can help her. So she took the risk. If you are risk averse, you will not take your group very far. You must be somebody who doesn't take foolish risks, but calculates risks. And then wonders, yes, this could happen, could I live with it? And you realize the benefits of taking this risk are so much higher, I would rather take the risk. If it doesn't work, I'm ready for it. That's really what leadership is all about. It's risk-taking, but taking calculated risks. Verse 7 says, Esther chapter 5, verse 7 says, Esther replied, my petition and my request is this. She's telling the king, if the king regards me with favor, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request, let the king and Haman come tomorrow to the banquet. I will prepare for them. Then I will answer the king's question. She has called the king together. The king has shown the scepter, so they are now in good relationship. But instead of giving the request, she doesn't. She just makes the king happy. Good food, available, good wife. But the king is very suspicious. I want you to understand leadership looks for timing. Some good things done at the wrong time will backfire. So it's important. And Esther knew the importance of timing. So she doesn't tell the king the first round. But Haman is actually finally involved, calling together his friends and Zeresh, his wife. Haman boasted to them about his vast wealth, his many sons, and all the ways the king had honored him, and how he had elevated him above the other nobles and officials. And that's not all. Haman added, I am the only person Queen Esther invited to accompany the king to the banquet she gave, and she has invited me along with the king even tomorrow. But all of this gives me no satisfaction as long as I see the Jew Mordecai sitting at the king's gate. Now, you see the provocation. But remember, she had many advisors. These Haman advisors, including the wife. And the wife says, don't get bothered. Let's kill this Mordecai. And so that you can enjoy let's kill him immediately, so that you can enjoy the banquet tomorrow. What a bad advice they were getting, because they were not aware Esther was tricking this guy's role. My friend, remember, advisors can give you advice, but you take responsibility. Haman was advised, and the advice took him to death. They didn't die themselves. It is him and his family that ended up suffering. Please never hand over your decision making to somebody else. Take advice, but make decisions yourself. You know, God will create circumstances that he uses for purpose. In chapter 6 of Esther, that night, the king could not sleep. So he ordered the book of the Chronicles to be the record of his reign to be brought. Can you imagine? God gave the king no sleep. Because of no sleep, he starts reading records. The record show Mordecai had not been warded. That's how Mordecai ended up not dying, but instead being promoted. And then chapter 6 verse 20, go at once, the king commanded Haman, get the robe and horse and do just as you have said. Haman promises, saying it's wonderful to praise Mordecai. He doesn't know the word Mordecai. It's only to discover that it's not him who was being, a leader must not avoid assumptions, verify issues. He didn't. He thought he's the one being praised. So he thought how he can be praised. Ended up his enemy was the one doing it. Esther now goes a third time and creates a climax. And it is in this climax, the king is all eager to hear, that he finally announces is Haman. And Haman, the king is also told, wants to kill Mordecai, who has just been promoted. So Haman ends up being hanged in the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. You can suffer the evil you wish others had. And that's why as a leader, you should never push. Discipline you can discipline, but you should never wish anybody evil. It is important to understand God sees. And if you are running your organization as a way of sitting on others, it could end up bouncing back to you. The last thing I want to say is how these people, after the Jews were rescued, they created a memorial. As the time when the Jews got relief, that as a memorial to remember it, and as a month when their sorrow was turned to joy and their mourning into a day of celebration, became something that is remembered, I believe, even up to now. My friend, if you want the things God had done for you to be remembered as a good leader, create memorials, birthdays, occasions, when maybe the organization did something wonderful, and then you remember it over time. That will help people to be motivated to continually replicate the good thing that actually happened. Memorials are good things for a good leader. That's what Esther teaches us. And my prayer is that you will draw out of the life of Esther. You will seek to have the community influence like Esther had. And God will use you to go over beyond to the level of a superpower if you trust him and walk with him. Thank you very much.